Welcome to the Gabrielle Lara Show, a podcast created for the new and aspiring entrepreneur who's navigating the messy middle part of their entrepreneurial journey. I'm your host, Gabrielle. I'm a niche expert and a sales coach who helps coaches like you find your niche and sell in a way that's authentic to you so that you can have a thriving business. I'll be inviting entrepreneurs from all walks of life onto these episodes to share their story of how they went from an aspiring entrepreneur to a CEO and all the messy parts they navigated in between so that you do not feel alone on this journey. Sit back, relax, and stay a while because you are more than welcome here. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Gabrielle Lara Show. I am with Brittany here. She has joined me on today's episode, and we are going to dive into her story, which I'm so excited to hear. So she's going to really walk us through where she was, where she is now, and all the messy that she's navigated in between so that everyone listening who's in the middle of navigating their messy middle doesn't feel so alone. So I'm going to hand it over to Brittany to introduce herself and to start walking us through her story so that we can just dissect it and really kind of pick Brittany's brain here in terms of what she had to navigate to get where she is now. So Brittany, thank you so much for joining me. What
I'm
is your
happy to share.
story?
Yeah,
Yes.
well, that was a great intro. So I don't know how I'm gonna I'm gonna follow up after that. But currently I am a business consultant for female entrepreneurs. That's what I'm doing now. But it really, and you said messy, which is the perfect way to describe it. It has been a very messy journey to get to this point. Looking back, obviously, you're like, it's a wonderful experience. I know everything was there for a reason. But I've been through a lot in my entrepreneurial journey, and a lot of that was actually over 5 years in a roofing company. Um, so that has been most of why I'm here today. Sorry, it froze for a second, so I couldn't see.
Oh, that's okay. I know. It's for everyone listening, we're having a little bit of Wi-Fi problem, so we should be good to go. Um, Walk us through that. So what was that messy that you experienced during that roofing company? That's so interesting.
Well, going back a little bit farther, so I think a lot of people definitely resonate with this. Is I thought I was going to be the corporate, climb the corporate ladder person, attend all the meetings that could have been emails, dress up for like nobody to see me back in my cubicle. I was so excited for this world and to become, like a VP or of something, and eventually CEO. And I had this very specific idea of how I was going to get there. I did very well in school. And I've always been into like the business side of things. My dad was that way. So when I finally got into the corporate world and I realized how a lot of it really works, at least for, most like the stereotypical corporate environment, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not for me. This is not what I want. I'm not good with like the politics, and it's very like quantity over quality, and metrics focused versus person focused. And I honestly had like a quarter life crisis after that because I left that job. I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do now because my whole life I've been prepared to be this person. And I kind of had to grieve that person. And I think it's so easy for us to say, like, oh, just leave the corporate world, right? Like, it's not good for you. But when that's what you expected with your life, I mean, you really have to process that. So I went through a phase after where I felt like I had, no motivation, no idea what I was going to do, everything that I thought my life was going to be. I'm like, what, like, where do I even start? And my husband was working at a roofing company for a while we were dating through when we got married. And he would always say, like, I just want to do this on my own. I want to do my own thing. Like, I could totally do this on like by myself. And I'm like, why don't we just do it? Like, why don't we just jump and just try it out? I'm good with the back end stuff. You're good at like the forward facing sales, obviously the more, technical roofing side. And we just did it. We set everything up. And then conveniently, Hurricane Irma hit us in Southwest Florida. And we're like, okay, this is it. Like, if there is a time to do it, it is now. And that same week, I found out I was pregnant with my first kid. Um, so it was just absolute chaos in a good way most of the time. But it was just us, like, just doing our best, just fighting every single day, trying to get customers, working on like the lead gen side. I was answering the phones and doing the books and, putting in it was just us basically. And it was such an amazing experience. And I learned so, so much, not only about just leading a company and the entrepreneurship side, but also, the relationships required, the patience required, how it's not glamorous, as people make it seem so glamorous. And it's a lot of sacrifice. And there were a lot of times where I didn't see my husband because he was out working, and a lot of vacations that we couldn't go on, and a lot of times where we couldn't be with our family. And I think people, just have these expectations. And then when they're finally in that stage, they don't know how to handle it.
Oh, 100%. So my biggest question here is how do you like partnering with your husband? Like, how do you like working together? And the reason why I ask is because my parents own a business together. So they own a mortgage company together. And
Wow.
my mom's the CEO. My dad is, the president and stuff. And my mom is just like, don't work with your spouse. Like, it's because it's a lot, right? Like, how has that journey been working with your husband? Like, is that something that has
I
been all rainbows and butterflies, or walk us through that?
I am so glad, honestly, that you asked this question, because I see on Instagram, like, and that's great. For some people, it works out super well. But when people are like, I cannot wait to retire my husband so that he can come work with me. And I'm like, girl, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. It is a shit show. Like,
Oh
it
my
is,
gosh, yeah.
and
It
there
sounds
are,
it.
and you have to have such specific personality. So that was part of why I stepped away, was because our personality, we're very type A. We like things the way that we like them. And at some point I'm like, you know what? Our marriage comes first. So I cannot lead the way that I want to lead. We can't both lead, together.
Right.
So
Yep.
personally, in most cases, I do not recommend, but it was a great experience for us to work through a lot of things and learn how we can work best together. But then it just kind of got to that point where it's like, okay, this is more, your thing. I've learned so much, but this is not where my passion is. I've been in a male dominated world for so long, and I want to become the mentor that I needed and didn't have. So that
I love
became my goal.
Oh, that's so
Thank you.
awesome.
So that was, and that's how I feel also, like, about, like, just being a mom. And I'm like, I want to become this person who can support other women, empower other women, and tell them, you can do this too, and here's how. It does not have to be a side hustle. You do not have to minimize yourself and your dreams and your goals because you have children, or because your husband is running a big business, or your husband is making the money. You can still make those things happen. And I think a lot of women don't feel supported enough in that aspect, and they feel, so they end up having to minimize themselves. And that's what really lit me up when I started kind of like dabbling into it, and I found out I was pregnant again. So I'm like, okay, if I'm going to start another business, like, I got it.
Yeah.
I'm on a time right now. Like, I have to do it.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I just got on Instagram and found this amazing online community, and it's just been great ever since.
Oh my gosh, how beautiful is that? And I really want to highlight here how you said, like, I just wanted to be the mentor that I needed. Because that so many people overlook that, right? Like when they're trying to figure out their dream customer and like really starting their business, they overlook being who they needed at a certain part in their life. But when you approach it from that lens, like you're just you become who you needed back in XYZ situation, you can make such an impact with that, and it's so incredibly powerful. And I find that you just find your people so much quicker because you know what they're experiencing to a degree. Obviously, everyone's experiences are different, but you relate to them through your story. You can really speak to them and you have that drive for impact because you know what they're navigating. I think that's so beautiful.
Thank you. No, definitely. And especially learning to be yourself and be authentic. I think another thing too that happens when you come from the corporate world, and that's when that's all you know, right?
Right.
Like, we're literally trained growing up to sit at a desk and not ask too many questions and do what we're told and ask for reassurance, right? So we kind of get addicted to that needing reassurance from somebody else and a boss to be like, yeah, you're doing a good job.
Right.
So we get out in touch and we're like, wait, it's just me. Like, there's nobody to clap for me. Like, so we have to really figure out how to become our own cheerleader too, in a sense, because we're not used to that. Right. And so a lot of people go back to corporate because they're comfortable there. When deep down, it's not really what they want. And I think part of it also just being authentically yourself is what I was saying is we leave the corporate world and then we kind of want to mimic it. Like we bring the corporate into our new business when it's like, okay, you left this for a reason. You're able to be successful by being yourself. And one of the things that I preach is like, it doesn't have to be so stressful and negative. You can have fun with it and you can be yourself with it. And I think through COVID was when I really learned to feel confident in myself because I didn't like I had nothing going for me. Okay. I was home with my kid, who obviously couldn't go to school. And I would just get on my personal Instagram and just make stupid jokes, come up with like little funny reels and funny videos because I didn't care. I'm like, what does it even matter anymore? Like, I don't care what anybody thinks of me. But when I did that, I got so many responses like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't know you were funny. Or like, oh, that's so cool. Like, this happened to me the other day. Or like, I totally feel like as a mom, like, oh my gosh, like, I cannot be here another day with like, I love my child, but I can't do this anymore. And I had so many people relating. I'm like, okay, there's something there. And that's how I'm going to find my people. And while Instagram, I think, can be seen as such a negative space, if you look for positivity, you will find it. And if you are patient, you will find your circle.
Oh, I love that so much. And I want to walk through, if you're comfortable, the confidence journey that you were just talking about, right? Like you were struggling with that confidence. What did you do to just kind of flip the coin there and start showing up and start, making those videos? Because I find that when people struggle with that confidence, they just kind of go back in their shell and they're really nervous to almost show up. So, how did you get to the point of that lack of confidence that you were talking about to just the other side of the bridge there?
I think honestly, I think that's such a hard question because there were so many steps that led up to that. I mean, and I went through like trauma as a kid, like with my mother, like telling me, like, you're not enough, you're not good enough. And then you have, like society telling you, like, you're not skinny enough, you're not this enough. So there's so much healing too that's required in your own entrepreneurial journey. And that's why you can't compare your journey to anybody else's because you have your own healing, you have your own trauma. You have to work through that to be the best business owner. And I think part of it was honestly having kids too, because I'm like, I have to figure this out because I want them to be confident and I want them to know that they can do whatever they set their minds to and not give a crap what anybody else thinks of them. And so I think finally during COVID, and my mother was she was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And this is my stepmom. And I couldn't go see her because of, the pandemic. So I was in this place where I'm like, like I said, like, I don't care. I have to get myself out of it. And that's kind of how something that I gave to myself to like focus, have something else to focus on. And it was just that point where you just kind of have to like, you just let go. Right. And that the things that are not serving you are going to go away, and the people that are meant to come to you, the things that are meant to happen for you will come. And the faster that you can just push through it, I think too, is like some of it is faking it until you make it
Yeah.
with confidence.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with that. And like there's a lot of people who are like, no, 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 don't fake it till you make it. But it's like, it's, it's showing up as who you want to be, right? It's like putting that
Mhm.
smile on when like deep down you don't want to, but your highest self would do that in this moment. Right? And I
Mhm.
just
Exactly.
it's so interesting you say that because like I know that phrase like gets a lot of heat, but I agree with it so much because it's like it's it's not as much like I feel like faking it. It's like it's just showing up as like your highest self. It's like showing up when you don't want to and it's like pushing through that mud. And there's so many times in your business that you have to do that. And I resonate with that a lot. So thank you for bringing that up and like especially with the healing that you mentioned. And I want to highlight that because I find that people are starting to talk about this more, but that was the biggest kick in the ass for me when I started my business. Like I just thought, you start your business and everyone really comes running to you because that's what everyone makes it sound like. Holy shit. I was like, what? But, with each I always say, and Hannah, our coach, Brittany and I have a similar, the same coach. She always says like new level, new devil. And that's it. And it's like with every new level of your business, right? From zero to $10,000, there's something that you have to heal. And like, I see it all the time because, and you mentioned a little bit about your childhood and, like not feeling enough or being told that you're not enough. It's all of that creeps back into your adulthood if it's not healed, and it won't go away. And that was like the biggest punch in the face for me. Like, was that something that kind of like threw you for a loop, or did you kind of anticipate that as you were starting your business, that these wounds were going to kind of surface here?
I don't even honestly.
It's such a whirlwind.
It's
It's such a whirlwind.
You'll think exactly, like, you'll think that, okay, like, I got this, and something else will come up, and I think you kind of, like you said, like, new level, new devil, you unlock new parts that will bring those feelings up, when it comes to confidence, and especially, like, having kids brought up a lot of, like, relationship trauma, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I remember feeling this way as a kid, like, I want to make sure my kid doesn't feel this way. So honestly, I'm all about therapy. I'm all about talking through it. um so I have an amazing therapist. And the good thing, I think the most important thing is awareness. If you are aware of what's going on, that's how you're going to change it. So as long as you have that self awareness, and even like, through journaling what's on your mind, like kind of sitting in when things aren't that great and understanding why, I think so much of my growth was not even learning, it was more unlearning things and asking myself why. So when I react to something, so let's say like, I see someone, this awesome influencer, and she's pretty and she's doing this, and I feel threatened or I feel something negative, instead of like, okay, like I'm just going to get out of Instagram. It's like, no, why am I feeling this way? Right? Where does this come from? Is it because I don't feel like I was enough? Is it because, this, and the more you ask yourself those questions, the more you can practice working through them, right? You have that like immediate reaction that you need to heal. That's your nervous system protecting itself, right? From the past, because your body still remembers that trauma. So there's so much work involved with that. And like with the confidence, and practicing confidence, it really is a muscle that you have to build. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable over and over and over. And there's the one, what's it called? Like the Dave Goggins book, Can't Hurt Me. Have
I
you read
love it.
that?
It's
Oh,
sitting right
so
over there, like right by my computer. I
really,
love
he is
that. Yeah.
amazing. And like when he was like, if it was something I didn't want to do, that's when I would make myself do it. And I got used to like, he like basically made himself addicted to being like in that pain, in that growth mode, because he knew that's the only way that he would progress and get to where he wanted to be. So I now, if I feel uncomfortable about something, deep down, if that's going to improve you, that if that's what you're supposed to be doing, I'm like, okay, well now I'm
Yep.
definitely doing it.
Anytime.
Like if it scares
Yep.
me, I have this deal with myself where I say, now you have to do it. So I will go ahead and like set a deadline, or like, set a podcast with somebody where the date is scheduled, and I will force myself once, when you have that feeling of like, okay, this is scary. Um, and that's so much of business, is just doing all the things that terrify
Oh
you.
my gosh. I just think that is so badass, Brittany. And I love that you brought that up because, like, and you said it's the level of self awareness, which 110%. And just the vibe that I was getting from you and the energy I was feeling from you as you were saying that, it's like, for you, it's like, it's also a level of self respect, right? Like you respect yourself enough to say, like, instead of scrolling through Instagram and seeing, the influencer who, maybe is making you not feel so hot and just shutting your phone off and, walking away, you sit there and you say, no, let's figure this out. What feelings are coming up for me? And however you hash that out, whether it's journaling or, meditation, whatever, but you have the respect for yourself to sit down and do that. And I think that that's massive because there's a lot of that that's missed, I find. And I think it's missed because women in particular sometimes aren't raised to be empowered, to feel empowered in themselves. And especially as maybe they start this journey and their partners don't support them or their family doesn't support them, they're, like you said, you really have to be your biggest cheerleader. And that is hard. It is so hard when you are clapping for yourself and no one else around you is. It is like so hard. But once you get through that, I find from what I've experienced myself and what I've heard from my community is like, that's where the confidence kicks in. That's where you're like, you know what? Screw this. Like, I've got this. I'm getting myself where I want to go, and I'm going to get that self awareness, right? I'm going to have the respect for myself to be disciplined and sit down during the day and get my work done instead of just kind of floating around because I don't have a boss anymore. Right? Like that's an adjustment. It's hard to just like, it's not easy to be your own boss when you don't have anyone to kind of hold you accountable or kind of hold your hand to the fire. You have to do that yourself while you're cheering for yourself, while you're healing your wounds, while you're trying to make yourself money, while you're figuring out how to pay the bills. Like it's not for the faint of heart. And I think that so much of entrepreneurship is romanticized, right?
Oh
It's
my
like,
gosh, yes.
here, let's start this. You'll make $100,000 in a week. Here's how to do it. Here's the strategy.
Oh, don't get me
I know
started on that.
that could be a whole podcast episode in itself. But
Yes.
I fell for that so much when I started my business, and I always tell the story is I didn't make money for 6 months in my business because I was just laid off from my job. But I bought everyone's strategy on how to make $100,000, and I wasn't making jack shit. Like, it's it's just a wild journey, and I'm so happy that you highlighted the healing aspect, being your own cheerleader, and like I said, I would kind of add on to that is the self-respect, and it's not overnight, and that's why I'm really happy you highlighted the confidence journey and how you took so many steps there because it's not linear, right? It's not, you know what, just say a couple affirmations, shake it off, and you're good to go. Oh my gosh, no. Because you have wounds that are fresh and they're here. And as you said with therapy, I'm happy you brought that up. Let's normalize therapy. I have my appointment in 30 minutes. Like I love
Awesome.
Pam. Pam is my girl. But there's just so much power in having that strong relationship with yourself, to have that awareness, to cheer for yourself, and to just really listen to your intuition and know, like, come hell or high water, I'm doing this.
Yes. And I think too with entrepreneurship, you have to be so aligned with your
Oh my gosh,
why
yes.
in business because there will be so many times where that is the only thing that will get you out of bed and the only thing that will keep you going. And that's one of the things with the romanticizing. It's like in a typical business, you've got 1 to 2 years where you're just working your ass off and you're not seeing any benefits of what you're doing yet and you're just trusting yourself. And it's what I like to call the Shawshank
Yes.
stage where you're like waiting, you're wading through shit and there's no light at the end. You got to trust that that's going to get you out. Right. And I think, and people want to find that secret of like, well, they must know something that I don't know because they're successful. It's like, no, they're doing all the shit that
Right.
you're avoiding. They're doing all the stuff that you don't want to do because it's not glamorous, right? It's the lead gen, the conversations, like getting your things in order, getting a marketing plan together. It's the stuff we don't get to see really behind the scenes of like what those entrepreneurs have had to go through to get to that point. We just see once they're
Right.
successful and everything is great and they have a team doing all the boring stuff, right? And it's like it's so much self-trust, which is why you have to heal because there's so much self-trust that is needed for you to run a business. And you have to know that, and it's the consistency too. Like there's no miracle
No.
plan. There's no like, hey, just do
Yeah.
A, B, and C. It's the consistency of doing it over and over and over until finally it works.
Oh my
So
gosh, 100%. And it's like, yes, it's the people that you see who are where you want to be, right? And whatever version of success, whatever that looks like for you, it's they face the beast head on. Just like you said, like they did the healing. They're doing the healing, right? I think that's will always be an ongoing process. I don't think that it's you have a couple of therapy sessions and it's done. Like it's ongoing. And like I always say, I will have a therapist for the rest of my life. Like it's just it's for me that's what works and journaling and all that. But it's like it is an ongoing process, and there's a billion ways to do business. It's figuring out what's most aligned with you and how you operate, in my opinion. And there's no right way, and it's like there's also there's a ton of wrong ways, but it's like in reality, like there's really no wrong way, and the only wrong way is if you quit. It's like you just keep refining until you figure it out. And like that was a huge aha moment for me in entrepreneurship, that like no one knows what they're doing. Like everyone everyone's just
exactly.
figuring it out as they go. And like I would put together like an email sequence or like a sales funnel or something, and it just didn't perform. And I would take it so personally. And I was like, wait a second, no one nails it on their first try. It's like constantly figuring out what your audience resonates, what headlines work, what posts convert, what copy converts. All like it's just so trial and error, and it's like let's start talking about that more. And because it's like I think that's what trips so many people up is they think the second they start their business they have to nail it, and it's like you won't. Like, please do not have those expectations because it's not going to happen.
That's the thing. And like, you have to embrace the suck. Your first email is going to suck. Your first post on Instagram is going to suck. Your first photo shoot might
Right.
not look so great, but you're not going to get better if you don't keep doing it. And these people, like, they're like, well, I'm just a perfectionist.
Yep.
No, you're afraid. You're procrastinating because you're terrified, and it is scary, but also nobody's going to care. Like, oh my gosh, like, remember that email or that funnel from like 2 years ago where it like wasn't perfect? Nobody cares. Like, everyone's just doing their own thing, right? They're not gonna judge you the way that you think you're gonna be judged. And if they do, then you don't need them in your life anyways. Bye. Like, okay, fine, unfollow me, right? If you don't like that I
Mm-hmm.
cuss sometimes, and
Yep.
complain about my kids, then
Yep.
peace out. Like,
Go
that's not
on.
the people that I want in my circle, right? I want to be myself. So no, I love everything that you said, and I loved your post from yesterday with like, okay, not everyone's strategy is going to work for you, and there's that whole misconception with the online courses of like, okay, well maybe this will do it. Like, if you're a
Yep.
serial courser, okay, well this is the one, this is it, and you don't even
Yep.
complete it,
And you're
right?
spending all this money. Oh my gosh,
Um,
100%. And thank you for bringing that up because I wanted to ask you or kind of walk through your post that you put up about the successful CEO. I thought that was so interesting. So can you walk us through kind of what was shared there? And something that really hit me was like the busy day-to-day stuff, like the successful CEO, their mindset, like they're looking at like the long-term ROI and not the busy day-to-day. And I really want to highlight that for our audience because almost everyone listening here is a new or aspiring entrepreneur. And if you guys can just nail this before you even start your business or in the very beginning, like take this and sprint. So I'd love for you to kind of dive into that post a bit if you don't mind.
so that post was 100% based on
Mhm.
actual conversations that I have with CEOs who have gotten to this point. And here's what happens is you're starting your business, right? Your number one goal is to make money and get clients. So you just need to get clients, make money, get clients, money, clients. Money. Finally, you start to see that consistent revenue. So here's where the first path, can be like you get a little off track is you're like, okay, well now I just need more. I just need more clients. I just need more revenue, right? But you're still yourself, right? You're one person. And like my son would say, like when I ask him to carry all his stuff, he's like, Mom, I'm not an octopus. I only have two hands. And it's like, you're not,
I'm
right?
not an octopus mom, please.
So that's where the first mistake is because they become so revenue driven and they're like, I don't need systems yet. When you say I don't need it, that's when you need it, right? And what I say is like a lot of CEOs wait until they're drowning to
Right.
think about building the boat. And then there's the CEOs that are so busy perfecting their pretty boat that they never get out into the water. So you need to find that balance because I see it so much as what happens is then you're drowning in your work. It's chaotic, right? Then you finally get to the point where you're like, okay, fine, I'll hire somebody, right? I guess I'll hire somebody to help me because you're drowning in client work. You have no automations. You're doing all the communication completely on your own. You're doing the actual work on your own. Plus you're doing the admin. Plus you're doing the social media. Okay, I'm going to bring somebody in to help me. You're bringing somebody in to chaos, right? And they basically, and I've seen this happen so many times, they end up creating their own role and then they start drowning and then you hire somebody else. So next thing you know, you've got like five people. You don't even
Right.
know what the hell they're doing. And you're still
Yep.
busy as shit, working 24/7, which is not why you
100%.
started a business. So the first thing you need to do when you get to that point where like, okay, I'm seeing, some consistency, I need to make sure my systems are in place. I need to make sure I've got SOPs. I need to make sure I have a role defined for who I'm going to hire first. Because what happens is you get all these miscommunications and expectations, and you start expecting people to do things when it's not even in their role. And then what always happens is, well, fine, they can't do it. I'm just going to go back to doing it myself because nobody else knows how to do
Right.
it the way that I do. And I can't trust anybody. And that is a limiting belief that's going to
100%.
kill
Oh
you.
my gosh.
Because I know that it's your baby, but you have to let those things go if you want to scale in a way that's sustainable, where you're not just miserable and burned out. Because then in that case, why not just
Right.
stay at your shitty
Exactly.
corporate job? Right? Because then at least you can
Mhm.
clock out at 5 o'clock. Like, why do this if you're not going to have any time with your family, no time for yourself, no hobbies, right? You're just taking everything on. That's the whole point. And I think another thing is the whole, like, attaching your self-worth to how much you're doing in your work. So that's another piece that I see with CEOs. But you have to be thinking long term in
Right.
every decision that you make, right? How will this impact me? And you have to invest in your
Without
business.
a freaking doubt. Without a doubt. And like, yes. And another story that I share on my end is like, I just thought I could do it all on my own. Like, I bought all the courses, right? Like, I got this. Like, please. I
Well,
bought
yeah,
$1 million of
they have the
courses.
secret.
What else do I need? I got it. So, that was so eye opening for me. Was like, you don't have to be a superhero, and that was like a healing thing that I had to do. Is I thought I had to do it all on my own to prove a point, and that came from my childhood. There was so much of that, but it's like, it, no one has to be a hero. Like, it's outsource, invest, find people that you align with, bring them into your business, allow them to help you so that you can continue to scale your business. And it may sound like now when I say it, I'm like, duh, but like, I truly, that slapped me across the face there's a lot of things that slapped me across the face when I started my business, but that certainly was one of them. Like, the power of investing. And I find that with investing, it really comes down to, as well, betting on yourself. Talk about confidence.
Confidence.
That is
Yep.
where that shit comes from. Sure, it can come from, hopping on your phone here and doing an Instagram story, and that's great. But it's like, it comes from betting on yourself and knowing that, like, okay, I'm going to invest this money. And in my case, that money wasn't even in my account. But I'm going to promise myself by the end of this, I'm going to make that back. And I always did. I always did. That's where confidence comes from. And it looks different for every single person, but like, bet on yourself. If you are struggling with that confidence, have the courage comes first, to bet on yourself in some way, somehow, but just do it.
And again, that's something
Mhm.
it's a muscle, right? Like, the first investment is going to be, but here's the thing, what I've noticed when I invest a large sum of money, I'm
Oh,
a
yeah.
little scared at first, right? I
Yep.
overthink. I'm an overthinker for sure. But as soon as I click pay,
Right.
it's almost like this relief. You feel that? Like, it's like I know that a burden has been lifted. I know that I'm doing the right thing for
Yep.
myself and my business. And I'm believing in myself. And like you said, betting on myself that I will make that back because I see
Hmm.
long term, 5 years from now. What does my business look like 5 years from now? It does not look like me not seeing my kids burn out, exhausted, and hating everything that I do. So,
100%. And
for
it's
sure.
like, and I find too, like, I always wonder, is it the money that we're really nervous to let go of? Or is it making the decision? Is it making the decision that, like, we're going to make this back come hell or high water, and like, making a promise to yourself? Like, I find that, like, sometimes I would like that's what I think it is over the actual money, right? Because like, money can be replaced as much as people don't think it can. Absolutely. It's like, it's more so betting on yourself. And especially if you have a little bit of a rocky relationship with yourself, it's one of the best ways to heal it is betting on yourself and proving that inner bully of yours wrong. So I'm so glad that we touched on that, because it's such a big part of entrepreneurship. And I'm happy that it was, I'm glad it was a part of your story, both of our stories, because I think it's so powerful to share. So I have two questions left that I want to ask you. So number one is, what is one thing that you wish you could go back and tell yourself back when you started your business, like in the very beginning? That's what everyone says. They're like,
Oh
Jesus,
gosh,
I wasn't
that's an
expecting.
emotional one.
Was not prepared.
No, like emotional. That that everything is going to be okay, and
Oh,
just have that self trust. And I had another thing too. I talk
yeah.
about is I had a business that failed. So when I had that little quarter life crisis before my husband and I started the roofing company, I tried to do kind of a version of coaching before, like, online. It was like a big thing, where I would do like SEO audits and help people with their websites, I did not tell a soul about it because I was terrified that if I failed, then everybody would know that I failed.
Yeah.
So what happens? It failed
Yeah.
because
Right.
I wasn't putting 100%. And I know looking back, I could have made that into something absolutely amazing if I had just gone for it, right? And I call this too like the 80% rule. I feel like a lot of people will just go 80% because then they always have the 20% as an excuse of like why it's not
Yeah.
working. Because they know if they go the full 100% of themselves and it fails, then they just have
Right.
themselves to blame. So they're
Right.
terrified. So they avoid those additional little things, those additional little steps, because that's like their own little cushion. Well, that's why it's not working because I'm not doing my lead
Yeah.
gen. Well, it's not working because this, right? But if I'm putting everything into it every single day and it doesn't pan
Oh
out,
my gosh, yes,
that's
because you're going
scary
balls
shit.
to the wall. You're giving your 10% effort. And especially
Exactly.
back to the healing aspect that you said of, the enoughness. Like I can relate to that 100% of like not feeling enough. And so it's like that especially is triggered when you go balls to the wall and maybe it does fail and you're like, wow, it brings it back up. And that is a really hard thing to navigate.
Yeah, for sure. So I would tell myself to just trust and to go with my gut no matter what anyone else says. And if it, like that quote, if it makes you happy, it does not have to make sense
That's so
to
beautiful.
anybody
Oh my
else.
gosh. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, final question is, how can people get in touch with you? How can they work with you? How can they follow you if they want to hear more about your story?
So most of my presence currently is on my Instagram. So Brittany Antonijevic.
I will put it
I
in
know that's a
the
mouthful.
notes below for everyone.
I always say like just type Brittany and then just kind of like slam the keyboard a
Okay.
couple times and you should be close enough. But I'm currently opening one-on-one containers starting next month. So I'll have a few spots for that. It's very customized. So it's based on your specific needs for your business in terms of like time and calls and support. Because at the end of the day, it's really about, what you're looking for, what kind of relationship with a consultant. And I consider myself really a
Mm.
strategist versus a coach. So I will jump into the weeds with you, put the plan together, and yeah, so you can reach out to me through DMs, through the application in my bio, or through my
That is
website,
awesome. Oh, I love how you
brittanyantonijevic.com.
said customized too, because that's just so overlooked. I feel like in the online space, like it has to be customized to people's businesses. It's not so much like, oh, I'm a consultant or a strategist and here's what worked for me and this is what's going to work for you. So I love that you highlight that it's really about your customer. I think that that's huge. Brittany, thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you
Sorry.
so much for having me. I said thank you so much
Oh
for
my
having
gosh.
me on.
This
This has
has
been
been a
so much
wonderful
fun.
conversation and I really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Did you enjoy today's
Thank
episode?
you.
If so, I would be super appreciative if you left a review and a rating and shared this with a friend so that I can continue to bring you value every single week. I'll see you next time.